amount of budget that we might have to do engagement, all within our existing LTP envelopes. If those envelopes change, then obviously we would need to rescope accordingly. So I guess that's what we mean by within existing envelopes that we are working with now. If those envelopes change, then we would need to reassess that position.
Through the chair, if I could just add to that as well. So Liz is absolutely right. If the council, though, whether it's through LTP or an annual plan, wants to change where it spends its money and, for example, removes the money from this area, then clearly, while the strategy may remain, the implementation of it will lapse for either forever or for a period of time. So that funding question sits with the council, and it will be through the long-term plan, as you know, Mayor Brown. So what we are saying is that we are ready, this can be done within the existing and continue to use the existing budgets for this work, but if this work is deprioritised or implementation money is removed, then clearly that will no longer happen, and it will sit in abeyance if and until things change.
Yeah, well, I get that, but that's not what my point was. We have 4 options here, and this is not just particularly about this. This is just so that people get in the habit of writing stuff so we can understand it. Option number 1 is do nothing, no dedicated, okay? Presumably that means that costs nothing. Option number 2...
Or does it have savings?
Or, no, in 2 and 3 and 4 are probably under the existing budget. I have no idea what the existing budget is. And so, if, for instance, it was presented that option 1 was no cost, and options 4 was 500,000 a year, I don't know what it is, then we would say that to go to option 1, you save $500,000. Well, that might give me a complete different view on this than what I've got here, because I don't know whether we're saving or so. This is not an informative report at the level that I expect. And so other people might be happy to vote on this, but I'm not going to vote on this because I don't know what the implications are. And it's not a matter of if it's in or out. We don't know how much. It should be quite easy to say that we currently spend whatever it is. God, no, it'll frighten me, but still. And what the other ones are. That's my point. It's not specifically about this. It might be something rather else. But from now on, I want to see financial implications treated with respect. You know, we treat with respect Maori impact, we treat with respect climate impact, we treat with it, and then the financial implications just dismissed like that. It's just not acceptable. And particularly at a time when we not only have a climate risk, climate crisis, we definitely have a financial crisis. Thank you for that.
Can I take that as a comment to your question? Councillor Walker.
Just following on from the Mayor's comment, it would be helpful where there is an item, and in this instance it refers to costs or the like, to have a link to whatever agenda or whatever report it is that approves that, so that you can actually track back. That would be really helpful. And the same thing if there's been the development of some policy or the like, so that if somebody wants to do some digging, they can. And I agree with the Mayor. We do need to have a handle on what the costs
Councillor, is that a question? Can we have...
I expressed it as a question, so I used the word can. That, I think, is a questioning format. Thank you.
Thank you. Megan?
Yes, I'm happy to send you the link as soon as we can on the original decision back in 2013 and any subsequent ones. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Turner.
Thank you. Just a question of Megan, if I could. Just when you explain back to the Mayor, does that mean that if we were to take the funding away, it would sit there and just add to that pile of 300 unfunded mandates? You know, we talked about that yesterday, about the number of unfunded things we're stacking up. So it's an operational thing now. If it was sitting there and then we just took the money away, it would just go into an unfunded mandate, would it?
Well, it would. So, well, there's 2 options with any kind of policy decision. You could either, if it's made, you can either revoke it so it disappears entirely as if it was never there before, or you make investment decisions, which means that actually while that might still be an aspiration or a desire for the council, it's not a priority at this point. And so for a period of time, that matter just sits there and is not a priority and is therefore not funded. Those are your two main kind of options. So I guess I was thinking more of the second one, where if you don't put the money towards it, yes, it would sit there, but it would sit there deliberately because you've deliberately made a decision to halt some funding or to just defer something. It's more rare, but it can be done where you kind of effectively revoke something and it kind of disappears.
Like the marina strategy.
But it would, those 300 things are giving us considerations which are a financial millstone, is how I understood it explained to us yesterday. Whether I'm right or wrong on that, would this enter that list?
Yes, it would. Yes, it would be a direction that the council has set. That would sit there and wait to be invested in whatever form, either in full or in part.
Thank you.
Councillor Watson.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I'm not going to concentrate so much on the climate change crisis or the financial crisis, but the mental health crisis, which is the thing that stands out most for me here. And I just wanted to check these almost unbelievable figures that are made in the report round about page 534 in the attachments, and I think it came from the REMU evaluation unit. One that went to the country as a whole, and I assume Auckland is worse, and that is 28% of young people, 12 to 18, were experiencing serious distress. So what's excuse me, I try to look at the footnote. What is encapsulated in the term serious distress? Just really what I mean, it sounds serious, but is there some kind of explanation to what that means, other than the obviously serious nature of the mental state people are in?
Thank you, Councillor, through the chair. We don't have the exact breakdown of what that would be in terms of the indicators beyond, but we could definitely find that out and report back on that. But what we did see throughout all the documents that we went through for the review and through the engagement, including sector staff and children and young people, is that the support for mental health was didn't match the needs and the level of
okay.
severity.
So I guess what I'm driving here, Madam Chair, is the extent of the situation we seem to be. Some of this information is 2021. We're a couple of years on. I think it's got worse over the last couple of years. And if we go to self-reported suicide attempts, we have some horrific figures there, up to, among some parts of our population, 1 in 5, 1 in 4 young people, and then even higher with people with other conditions. That's the most distressing thing out of anything. We get comments in the media about it, but not to the extent of those figures. So if we come back to the council response, and then I see that some of the young people, when they're asked, what makes things better or what makes you feel better, it's some quite simple things. If I just take a council responsibility here, it's open space, like greenery, and that's a well-established measure in overseas countries for better mental health, is having access to open space, and facilities, council facilities. So I guess, Madam Chair, what I would find really helpful, if we had a very clear list of what the council could do to address that. And the young people have told us, in those cases, 2 very simple things that I don't think's been reflected in our planning regimes over the last 4 or 5 years. Open space has been pretty low down, and the large budget, we were looking at closing things, and some things we did close, like Kiari Kids. So is there a short list of things that we could practically do that addresses that real crisis of our youth's mental health?
Thank you for the question. Absolutely, and Council does have roles and levers that support the protective factors for children and young people. So as you described, the open spaces, places where young people can gather and connect with one another to feel like they belong in their city, those are all really important things that Council is already playing a role in. And I think there's opportunity for us to do that better and differently going forward, to say who are those young people that are most affected and most by these sorts of things, and how can we sort of target and tailor our support within those facilities that we have, within those spaces, to support those young people. How do we work alongside community partners and government to play our role to the best we can, alongside what government's responsibilities are, which is put more at the sort of coalface of the crisis point. So absolutely. And you know, young people, through the engagement that we did, and children, talked a lot about what made them feel like they belong, which was having supportive relationships, supportive communities, places where they could go where they felt safe. So safety is a really big thing too for young people, that they can be safe, one, in their identity, but also physically safe, so that they can move around the city because they've got reliable public transport that feels safe when they go to the station or the bus stop, those sorts of things. So, you know, we do have a lot of levers that we can work better, I think.
Just one final, if I may, Madam Chair. In terms of its safety, and I see that coming through really strong there, we're adults, it's the old maxim about, not understanding people until you've walked in their moccasins, but often that safety is foremost across the board, and again in a country where there's a high bullying rate at schools, and we've seen what's happened at some of our transport hubs. So I really appreciate that kind of ability to tie it into practical things that we've got some control over, that can help this, this appalling statistics that continue to come through. Thank you.
And on that note, things like the pride centres, the way that we celebrate, our rainbow community, sends a really strong message to our wider community about what we value, and that we value everyone in our community and all their diversities.
Thanks, Liz. Thanks, John. Councillor Filipaina.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, ladies. Good to see you still here, Liz. I just want to confirm that the assessment criteria on the options, that there were 4 categories: context, effectiveness, accountability, and resourcing. And that option 4 ended up, when you had a look at everything with the criteria, option 4 ended up as the best way forward for our rangatahi and tamariki.
Thank you, Councillor. Through the Chair, that's correct. But the criteria number 4 around resourcing was specifically, I suppose, council specific. So there were 2 elements: can it be designed and implemented and maintained within the existing resourcing context, and will it strengthen our investment decisions? This agenda report is for the development of how we take forward our priorities for child and youth wellbeing, rather than the spend of all programs that would sit under that. So that was the consideration we took when reviewing our findings and putting the options forward.
Can I also, through you, Chair, that option 4 has the strategic priorities nested under ngā hapuri momoho, thriving communities?
Through the Chair, that's correct.
What repercussions, for want of a better term, would there be if this doesn't go through on and within Tāmaki Makaurau for our tamariki and rangatahi?
Through the Chair, thank you, Councillor. Are you asking if option 4 didn't go through? I mean, there are remaining 3 options to consider, but through the assessment criteria, we believe that option 4 is most likely to give us the ability to address some of those key concerns that came through the report and that Councillor Watson has raised. Ngā hapuri momoho is a mandated strategy that exists, that we are trying to give effect to, and it has a series of investment criteria and ways of working. So, and the outcomes align to what we're seeing in this report. Our concern, I suppose, would be if we went through another option Option 3, new strategy and approach, would absolutely address some of the review, but it would be expensive and time consuming. Option 1 is what we have now, and we just don't think that's addressing through the criteria. It's not found to be addressing the challenges and particularly focusing on those groups most in need. And an enhancement is still, as we laid it out, was more council internal. So option 4, within, against that assessment criteria, we believe is going to have the greatest effect for council internally in terms of how we deliver our work and remain conscious of our internal challenges or priorities, as well as deliver for our children and young people, but specifically those facing the most persistent disadvantage. And we heard a lot about that today from the demographic panels.
And just the last one, Chair. Do you know across Tamaki Makaurau with the local board statistics, which local boards have the highest rate of youth in regards to the medium age? Which local boards would you say in the top 4? If you haven't got that information, I can help you with that.
Through the chair, I've got the top 4 by engagement numbers of who we spoke to, which may give a suggestion, but not the numbers in terms of the population groups, which I think is what you're asking.
I think at least this. Oh, sorry.
And I would, we can certainly get that and be very specific around that, but from my knowledge of that is the southern boards and the western boards have got the highest populations.
Yeah,
of
the south and the western?
Yeah.
Okay then, thank you. Kia ora. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Ferry.
Thank you. My question, could we just go back to the slide with the 4 options, please? Yeah, thanks. Cool. So we've had a little bit of mention of the potential cost of them, and you just touched on that a little bit too. And it would seem to me that option 4 is probably actually reasonably financially prudent compared to some of the other options. But I'm also worried about reputational risk in this space, particularly given what we just heard from the Youth Advisory Panel co-chairs, what also came up in terms of intersectional issues that were raised by other panels that, reflected those concerns, particularly the stuff mentioned around homelessness for rainbow rangatahi. So what do you feel are the reputational risks of each of these options? Because that, having heard what we've just heard, I would be really concerned if we didn't come out of this supporting an option that means we do some work in this space. That would send a really awful message to the people we've just heard, but the broader youth community.
Thank you, Councillor Ferry, for the question. I think there is some considerable reputational risk with option 1 of having no dedicated strategy, given Auckland has a youthful population, many of our young people who are not doing so well. Auckland has been fated in the past because we were leading out 2013 with a child and youth strategy, which was pretty forward-thinking for an Auckland region, for a TLA at that time. And I know the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet in the past have hailed Auckland's strategy as an example to other local authorities to follow, and it aligns well with the government's own national wellbeing framework for children and young people. So I think there absolutely would be some risk, particularly given what we've heard from the panels today. Option 2, the enhanced status quo, less so, but we don't know that's going to be as effective. And this is actually about making more impact. Yeah. And where option 4 has greater benefit is that we're actually really saying let's target our more limited investment. If we don't have as much money to play with, then let's use it in the best possible way by targeting on those young people and children who are not enjoying the same outcomes as others. So I think that's, it's about being more impactful and accountable, therefore, for the outcomes we're achieving. A new strategy, of course, I think that will potentially respond really well to the findings of this review if we would have a more singing bells and whistles strategy done from scratch, but there's some big cost implications. And again, back to the cost implications, it was related to how the cost of developing a strategy like that and the level of engagement and the level of effort that would go into that is where the bigger cost would lie, and more staff resources as well as time to do that. So that's the sort of cost trade-off there.
So is it fair to say then that option 3 is probably the most expensive option? Okay. And what does it mean in terms of timeframes as well? That's something, you know, because, I mean, you've just given us some pretty robust advice. We don't usually get advice that so boldly says what we have is not fit for purpose. And I think we need to take that really seriously. So what are the timeframes, you know, in terms of 2, 3 and 4? How quickly would we be able to have that engagement conversation, have something that actually would be fit for purpose, do you think?
With regards to, through the chair, and thank you very much. With regards to option 4, we think that would be about a 12 to 18 month period to develop those strategic priorities and take Ngāha Porima Moho and Nesta. The timeframe reflects that it's a new approach for council, and it speaks to that consolidation of strategies, but without wanting to reduce our focus on children and young people. And it would require some trade-offs, so it would be a lot of work with staff to understand if this is the direction we're going in. Some choices need to be made about how we use our levers, our resources, our investment. So that's that time frame. New strategy and approach is significantly longer. I think we had it in for maybe 20 to 24 months. And that's because of the kind of deep co-design that we'd need to go through with a range of partners. Enhancing the current strategy is relatively, in council terms, a shorter time frame, because when we talk about enhancing, it's in monitoring and evaluation. We're saying we're going to keep those 7 goals broadly the same, and just look at how we monitor and evaluate those. So that would be about a 10 to 12 month time frame. So option 2 faster if we ignore everything else, then option 3 would take the longest, and option 4 sitting in the middle.
Thank you. Final question, if that's okay. So is it fair to say that option 4 is responding to the direction that's been coming from the Mayor and Councillors about sort of consolidating some of these strategies, actually getting them down to something that's more manageable and aligned?
Absolutely, that was one of the key things in that, looking at that option.
But also, sorry, if I could just add to that, it was also about how we could create an option that would open up greater partnership and co-investment opportunities with obviously community partners, but with the likes of central government as well, where we might be able to see some stronger opportunities there. And Ngāha Porima Moho has a framework that is already set that would make that a bit easier without losing that focus on children and young people.
Thanks. We should never do anything for only one reason, so appreciate that. Thank you.
Councillor Stewart online.
Thank you. A lot of the questions have been answered, but do we have to actually vote on this today? Because we really need to understand what this is going to mean to us financially. And I'm just thinking we're so close to an election, and, you know, taking into consideration that, you know, we may have to discuss with central government, could we not vote on this at another time? Because, you know, listening to the Mayor, he had some concerns, and a few others have too. Thank you.
We will be voting on this today, Councillor Stewart. Councillor Henderson.
Yeah, thank you. Just a quick question, because we had the lovely panel discussions all morning. They're fantastic. Have the Youth Advisory Panel been involved in this decision, and how would they be affected by moving to option 4?
Thank you very much, and through the chair, yes, so they have been involved in the beginning. So with all the engagement we did with children and young people, that was co-designed with the Youth Advisory Panel, and then with partners that they connected us in with, and we have involved them in our findings in terms of what emerged from the engagement, and then also they have we tested some of these options with them, and they were supportive of at the time with the information we had with the Ngāha Porima Moho nesting, because of its focus on prioritising those groups that they also identified as facing the greatest disadvantage.
Councillor Williamson online.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. Look, I want to reiterate the Mayor's concerns, but I want to sort of take it a bit further. We're in a dreadful financial position. We're going to have to make really, really, really big decisions about trade-offs, about what we keep doing and what we don't. There is no alternative. It's not like we can say, oh, we can do everything. And I'm really concerned when I read a paper like this, which has got a whole lot of stuff about implications for all sorts of things, for the climate and for Māori and so on. And then under financial implications, it says this can be delivered with an existing budget and staff. I would much rather a paper like this really clarified exactly what the sum of money is, clarified what the competing bids might look like in terms of their value, and gave councillors a better chance of choosing, is this something we want to be doing? Because there's a huge range of other deliverers of service. There is the Mental Health Foundation, there is ranges within central government like the Ministry of Youth Affairs, and there is ministries coming out of our ears in this country. Should they not be doing a whole lot of this stuff and we be sticking more to our core role and functions? I'm putting it to every councillor right now. We cannot continue to have papers come in isolation and have to make a decision on that bit without knowing what the whole implication across the entire budget, for which we have got serious, serious problems. I've got no choice, but I'm going to try and vote completely no to this whole package at this point, and I'd like to see it way more presented with a much better than financial implications. We can do this with an existing budget and resources. That might clearly mean the department that's offering that up is overstaffed and has too much money already. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Williamson. We'll take it as a comment. Member Ashby.
Kia ora, thank you. About 50% of our Māori population are under 24, and also in the south and the west primarily. And we heard earlier about some of the other troubling statistics. So, in your opinion, is option 4 the one that best serves that community?
Look, because of being nested under Ngā Hapori Momohoa, which already talks to supporting Te Ao Māori and our treaty obligations and how we support by Māori for Māori solutions, it fits well within that framework. And certainly one of the things we're saying through option 4 is that we need to target and prioritise investment to those young people and children that are not enjoying the same outcomes. And we know Māori and Pacifica children and young people in particular are not. So that would provide strategic direction in that way, prioritising those children and young people and the outcomes that they need.
Cool.
So yes, we do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Walker.
My question was essentially very much the same as Councillor Williamson's, and my question is given the overlap with government agencies, what options have been looked at to get parts of government departments to work on this in an integrated way, and that might generate some cost savings, but in addition to that might actually have the merit of more integration?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Walker. I think there's sort of two things we're perhaps talking cross purposes with. There's the cost of doing any further strategy work. And then there's the investment council makes in a whole range of activities and services and programs to support children and young people in our city. So when we're talking about the financial implications, we are talking about the former thing, with the cost of doing the strategy work, not the cost of all of the investment council's making. We are doing that in all sorts of ways, and without strategy to sort of determine what the priority should be, there is a risk that council continues to make ad hoc decisions around where that investment in children and young people should go. So it's by having a strategy that says these are our priorities, this is our target, this is our focus, we are more likely to use whatever more limited resources we may have in the future, if that's the case, more wisely. It was also identifying that we know we don't have all of the answers and all of the levers to address the issues of children's, young people's wellbeing, and that government holds a lot of those. So how can we develop much more coordinated approaches to some of the big systemic issues we're seeing in our communities that affect children and young people, and use our levers, as I said before, the protective factors that we work with, that we have control over to support children and young people's wellbeing. So I guess I don't know if that's fully answered your question, but I was just trying to separate the thing between the investment we make in programs and activities versus the investment to redevelop or nest the strategy, that strategy work, which sits with a policy team and a small policy team and probably one FTE. That's what we're talking about, and some engagement budget.
Thank you. We have 4 more questions. Councillor Baker.
Thanks. So just so I get my head around this completely, and I agree with Councillor Williamson's and the Mayor's comments about the funding, but my understanding of this is that we are simply deciding today on what strategy we will take forward.
Correct.
And then we will then have, when it comes to the LTP discussions, we will then have a discussion as to whether we fund that strategy. And so for me, if you don't want to pay any money, vote option 1, which is to remove it. And so I've just got that right. So this is about just, because I'm hearing lots of talk about today, we're making decisions about funding. We're not. We are making a decision on which strategy to take forward because the old one hasn't worked. So we're not committing council to vast amounts of money that we don't have or we're wanting to save by supporting your recommendation today.
Correct.
Yes.
Thank you for that wisdom, Councillor Baker. Member Henry.
Kia ora. I don't like to say that the last speaker is wrong, because even though it's not a budget bid, in a way it is, because you're agreeing to something right from the start. So you know, so what is the cost? That's what I want to know. And I also want to know who's responsible for getting it wrong. Because if you got it wrong, and I don't mean you, but you as the organisation, the family, what went wrong?
Thank you for the question. In terms of the second part of your question, the context has changed a lot since I Am Auckland was first adopted in 2013. So 10 years on, the context for children and young people is different. The things that they're facing are different. And what we're really saying is that we think the strategy isn't fit for that future that they're facing and the opportunities that we need to, again, with limited resources, how we can better focus that limited resource we have. So that's really what we're saying about it being not fit for the future. And lots of great things, don't get us wrong. The council has done some amazing things with children and young people over the last 10 years and are continuing to do some amazing things. But perhaps we could be more targeted in the way we do that going forward, particularly when our resources are limited. In terms of the first part of your question about the cost, as I said, what we're talking about here, the financial implications relate to the cost of delivering those strategy options, either remove the strategy, enhance the existing strategy, do a completely new strategy, or nest under Ngāha Puri-Moana thriving communities. So those are the cost of developing strategy. That's the cost of engaging with stakeholders, talking to young people, talking with the council family, and that's basically staff time. And as I said, it's probably around 1 FTE over a period of time.
Okay, so what's it going to cost? I mean, I know it's a wee bit facetious, but then again, it's not. Because at the end of the day, what did it cost for the last one? Are you saying one of those options is to stay with what it cost the last time? Well, you know, I mean, give me a ballpark figure. Surely you know what sort of money you're after to do either or any one of them.
And look, I think that's the point of doing the next sort of, if you agree to doing a option 4, we would scope that and bring that scope back to this committee with what the cost implications are of that. But as I said, it's probably 1 to 1.5 FTE over a period of time. And that may not, if it's option 4 and that it's been done within about a year, you know, it's, Megan, I don't know whether you're happy for me just to sort of
Okay.
pluck a figure out between 100 and 150,000 perhaps, including engagement?
Okay, just one little supplementary. If we were to do any one of those 4, when can you start and when does it finish?
So as outlined in the report, option 4 we're saying would take about a year to 18 months, depending on when we can get started. But we would look to scope that following the decisions made by this committee and come back in the new year with an outline of that and then go from there.
Councillor Foley.
Kia ora, thank you, Chair, and thank you for a very good review and comprehensive report. I'm mindful that we have just heard from all of our panels, and there was a strong message from all of them that we need to do more in this space for youth across all of those different sectors. My question is, I've got a couple of questions, short ones. The first one, you said that having a strategy that is more focused, more targeted, more able to assist us in our decision making, is it your advice that if we do that, option 4 would enable us to do that in a tight fiscal environment that we're in, that it could save us money in the long run?
Potentially, yes, and ensure that the investment we are making is used to the most impact. Yeah, absolutely. And that opportunity, as Hannah had mentioned, around co-investment and partnership. So that for the investment we make, we're leveraging others' investment. So both of those opportunities there.
Thank you. And so just through the chair, an additional point there is that Ngā Hapori Maumoho sets out a series of investment criteria for us to consider, and that we think that they speak to these findings. And so by applying these and using that as a framework, we believe that trade-offs will have to be considered, which isn't something we've seen as much in the spend in the child and youth programming space to date, which we think would help focus both the way we invest, but how and who we are investing in. Okay, kia ora, thank you. And then my second question, which you may or may not be able to answer today, but we've heard a lot of questions about financial cost, but are you able to comment on what might be the societal cost if we choose to do nothing and if we don't have a strategy in place that considers young people, especially considering the fact that we still have one of the highest youth suicide rates in the developed world? Kia ora.
A difficult question to answer, but thank you for the question, to know what the full, I can't put a figure on what the societal cost of not having a strategy. I guess it's the opportunity cost of not using our resources for most impact and to be most effective. I guess that's the big opportunity cost, I think, if we don't have a strategy. We will continue to do things for children and young people in our city without a strategy. We've been clear about that. It's about that then the decisions tend to be ad hoc. And are we getting the most impact? Are we just taking a scattergun approach to what we do? So I guess that's the risk.
Kia ora. Thank you, Madam Chair. We certainly like that word, opportunity cost. Kia ora.
Thank you. And the last question, Councillor Turner.
Thank you. Just from my understanding, so you set the strategy, but it's delivered through the local boards?
It's absolutely, it's delivered through both local boards and their programming and activity, as well as regional community services. So across the whole council family, CCOs as well.
So aren't the local boards best suited for the strategisation through their connections with their groups and their key stakeholders and their partners? And, they have those outcomes people there. They'd probably know the strategy they need today and just the funds they need today without our input.
Look, we would certainly, under the governance framework for policy development, work with local boards on any strategy development work. And they do have a lot of the levers, but it's useful to have a regional strategy that sets that sort of overall direction for what we're trying to achieve for young people and children in our region.
So your one staffer will probably be duplicated in the local boards too, because they'll be engaging with those people.
Well, we'll work with them on engagement. So we work with their local engagement advisors, we work with local board staff, our community services staff that work with children and young people work across local boards. So we work with all of those staff.
Okay, thank you.
We have one more question. Councillor Fletcher, online.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. And thank you to the officers who have worked on this. My difficulty is that there is no doubt there is this need, but it's a question of where best the services are going to be delivered from. Could officers tell us what engagement there's been with their central government counterparts, given the circumstances that Auckland is in at the moment, as to whether there are any strategies that can be worked on more effectively and funded through Wellington?
We've certainly worked with central government in the past. As I said, they actually came to us, the previous Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet under Prime Minister Ardern, because of Auckland Council strategy when they were developing their own child wellbeing framework, child and youth wellbeing framework. So they actually looked to Auckland Council in terms of some of the stuff we're doing to support children and young people to thrive in our city and holding that up for other TLAs across the country. So, and there's certainly opportunity for whatever we do going forward, depending on what option is chosen, to work more closely with central government about aligning outcomes and where co-investment can occur. And we're already seeing that in parts of the council family. So the Southern Initiative and the Western Initiative are already working with government closely around supporting outcomes and programs for children and young people. So there are examples of where we're doing that already with government, and I think the big thing is the opportunity to do more.
Liz, you've worked in this area for a long time, and I really applaud it. What I'm interested in is really current dialogue with central government, because, that while it was aspirational in its time and wonderful that we have been held up to be a good role model, at the moment we won't be a good role model if we go bankrupt. And I think there's a measure of pragmatism there.
Yeah.
I wonder whether, I love to see this work continuing in a more relevant way, but I'm mindful that the delivery agent could be central government or local government, but it's going to have to be funded more so from central government. Was there an appetite to defer this until you'd had current conversations with the relevant ministers or officers?
I think, thank you, and through the chair, I think one of the things was we were concerned that, or we were aware that the current goals of IM Auckland are not completely relevant, and it's difficult to enter some conversations with central government, which is, as we know, a kind of complex beast in and of itself, without being clear on what our own objectives and outcomes were, and then finding ways to leverage partnership opportunities. We are in conversations with parts of central government around commissioning models, what they're focusing on, how to deliver evaluation models and all those areas. But until we're really clear on what our priorities are for children and young people, we do stall slightly, and given the review findings that the current strategy is not as relevant as it could or should be for the needs of children and young people, we think that having some stronger outcomes and objectives would put us in a better position to have some strategic conversations with the relevant departments and central government as and when we can.
That's very helpful, and forgive me, I've been away, I was away, been home for a couple of weeks now, but was this workshopped? I can see the importance of having a very clear brief so that our officers are then mandated to talk to their central government counterparts. But I just don't feel comfortable in advancing this today because none of the options are as clear and concise as the answers we've just heard from the officers. Madam Chair. So if you could give me some guidance on that, or whether or not there would be a possibility for your recommendations to have some qualifications against them. You know, really what you are just seeking is a clearer brief from this committee or the governing body as to what we are seeking to achieve. But that isn't quite as clear in the recommendations as I would feel comfortable with.
Councillor, I'm just trying to recall if we had a workshop on it, and I can't remember. We've had so many workshops. Might have been earlier. Yeah. Look, I think what we need to do is vote on the recommendations. The discussion around, I think the information the officers have provided around the strategy and the report that's been provided with it is pretty clear. I think they've done what we've asked them to do, which is consolidate strategies. That is to find something that is fit for purpose now, that the current strategy wasn't. And then when we go into the long-term plan, we can have a conversation around whether the strategy gets funded or not. So I would like to vote on what's before us today. And yes, we're going to go to comment soon. I haven't moved the item. I was just responding to Councillor Fletcher's request.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. No, I do need a mover and a seconder, Alf and Latu. Thank you very much for your report. We're going to move into comments now. Thank you. First up is Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. From my perspective, children and young people are important to me, and I believe they are important to Auckland. We often say we do not like the direction that Wellington give us as far as what they want to do to us, and that's why I'm going to support the recommendations. I think that the strategy for option 4 is within this year's budget, all right? This year's budget. I think in the paper, bullet point 109 is really important because it's the next phase, which is the detailed program for the design and delivery. I think it's about figuring out what we want for Auckland when it comes to our children and young people. And then the second part is to decide who funds it. It may not be us, it may be central government, it could be maybe local, there's a whole lot of hypotheticals. I'm not going to go there. What I'm saying is we need to decide as the governors for this region what we believe is right for our young people, our children and young people. That is what we are approving. We are not approving any funding. That's the next stage. So in saying that, because that's what I believe in, children and young people, I will be supporting the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Watson.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Simpson there, and I as usual, I must be in a parallel universe here because when I look at the recommended option, it says it can be delivered within the existing budgets and staff resources. So I don't, for the life of me, see what the issue is there. We have a crisis, and to be honest, I don't think the strategy needs a lot of reworking. It was bad back in 2021. It's worse now. That's pretty much the conclusion. It's a lot worse for young people. The mental health outcomes are really disturbing, and to be honest, I don't think as a country we've really taken the full effect of COVID and the kind of behaviours, the less than desirable behaviours that enabled in terms of isolation. I saw the education debate on the other night, and the number of people, young people aren't going to school, which is really significant right across the board, not just in the usual suspect areas, right across the board. Similarly with the notion of targeted groups, yes, the statistics there for certain groups are appalling, but I would suggest that they're pretty bad elsewhere too. I know a few years ago some of the worst statistics were in parts of the ward that I represent, where you would assume that wouldn't hold true. So there's a massive challenge here. The council is limited, and strategies by themselves don't address any of this. It's actually actions. And when I listened to the young people, what they were saying, they were quite simple actions they were looking for as far as the council goes. Keeping the facilities open and functioning as they should. They like to use the council facilities. Making places safe. Our society, particularly in terms of perception, but also reality, has become less safe, certainly as far as young people perceive it. Keeping and enhancing what green spaces we've got. That's a well-known international measure for people's mental health. They did studies in Scotland and the huge housing estates in Glasgow and Edinburgh about the beneficial effects of having access just to open space. I don't know if that's filtered through to us sufficiently yet, but here's something that reinforces it. So, Madam Chair, without prolonging matters, I would hope that out of this comes some very pragmatic responses that go to maintaining what we've got, enhancing it where we can, taking on a lens of the young person a lot more than we do. We get distracted with other things, understandably, but having at the front of our mind those statistics that were there that are deeply concerning, that are getting worse, and that have all manner of repercussions for all of us if they're not addressed, or if there's not a real action that backs up strategies and policies and all the other stuff. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Foley.
Kia ora, thank you, Chair. And, I just want to thank and strongly tautoko the sentiment shared by the Deputy Mayor and also by Councillor Watson. And I too will be supporting the recommendations. I'm really, really, really mindful of what we've heard from young people today, but also from the other advisory panels today. And I'm mindful of what the report itself says in the executive summary, where it says that a headline finding of the review is that council could do more to focus on those experiencing the greatest persistent disadvantage, as well as empower children and young people to influence the decisions that affect their lives. All of us have young people in our lives, and all of us should be concerned about the future and the Auckland that we are building for young people. I don't think anybody here would disagree with that statement. And having a strategy that helps us to focus our decision-making better so that we consider them, consider young people, consider that generation, the next generation better, so that we can focus our investments, our resources better, surely that's a good thing. You know, and I'm just really confused as to why people are speaking up against this particular motion before us. I'm mindful that I come from the ward that has the youngest population in the country, Manukau Ward, and our neighbours are not far behind, but also our cousins over in the west are not far behind. And I'm mindful that we still have a shockingly high rate of youth suicide in this country. It's shocking. I think we're still second highest in the developed world. And as the Deputy Mayor said, we should not just rely on Wellington, on whoever's in government to solve those issues. We have a part to play as well. As a council whānau, we have a part to play. And at the very least, we should approve a strategy that's going to help us to focus our resources, to make better decisions, to take into account young people and the way our decisions affect their lives. Let's leave the funding and those arguments to when we look at the LTP. Those arguments, are coming. But for today, let's agree that we will take a strategic approach that will help us to shape our decisions in the future and the way it affects the young people in our lives in the future for our city. Kia ora. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. And last speaker, Councillor Williamson, online.
Yeah, look, Madam Chair, I'd like to address a couple of comments. One from Councillor Watson, where he says, well, it's from within the baselines that we've got in terms of budget and resources. You can only make that statement if you can add at the end of it, and I am confident there is no wasteful spending in this council. If you think there is any wasteful spending and money that actually could be saved by having a proper magnifying glass put over all the details. You cannot just say, oh, well, it's already in the system, so it's not extra. It is extra if that is wasteful spending or not appropriate. Secondly, I am not opposed to any of the things that people are talking about we would like to see for our young people and how we would like it to benefit them in our society. That is not my comment. I think those things are very laudable. But if there is multiple agencies, and I can list you at least 15 right now involved, both private sector and government agencies, that should all be covering this, is that a highest priority for your next dollar of council spend? And I don't think you can answer that, because you have to see what all of the other competing priorities are if indeed we're going to make savings. And I said it yesterday at the long-term plan meeting, and I'll say it to you again, and you really need to get this. A strategy is only a dream if it doesn't have a funding ticket associated with it. And I don't know what developing a strategy like this means for costs and implications for both us and for others. And therefore we can sit all day long. I could come up with a list of wonderful things I would love to see. But unless I can put a price tag beside it and say we haven't got the funding, what you are doing with development of a strategy like this is creating expectations that cannot be fulfilled or may not be fulfilled. And I'd make a plea that we don't put papers like this ever again to this council that aren't really focused on what we're trying to achieve. Yes, what has failed so far in the strategies we've had and why, because I really don't think it covers that well enough. And the last bit is, and what sum of money are we prepared to commit to this, and how does that relate to all of the other competing funding squeezes? Because there'll be lots of you around the table who at the next paper will want to spend money on that, and at the next paper will want to spend money on that. Well, it can't be the lot. We are seriously in financial difficulty. I ask you to really give that consideration.
Madam Chair, can Councillor Williamson see recommendation C?
Can everybody just have a look at recommendation C? Are the mover and the seconder happy with the C? I know.
Yes, I can see the red bit.
Thank you.
I think that was explained right through, but if it helps people realise, I mean, it's basic because it was through the discussion. Well, then I'm okay with it.
Thanks, Al.
Because it's exactly what Councillor Baker asked with his partai, and the answer from our staff. So, look to, yeah, I have to say thank you.
Councillor Leone, you're our last speaker. Thank you.
Yeah, just a really last comment, and just referring again to note C, that this is not a financial or budget discussion, that this is based on obviously the strategy going forward, and even if it were, it's been raised that it would be 150k thereabouts, which I think would be money well spent. Not that we're talking about this today, just keeping a focus on our rangatahi and our future leaders for this city. We have a responsibility to ensure that this council has its own information, that it has its own statistics, and that it has its own strategy going forward. And like has been mentioned earlier today, we're going to have a huge youth population right across Tamaki Makaurau. So we need to really ensure that we've got accountability to them, the future generations of this city. Kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor. Right, ready to put the recommendations.
Division Chair. Sorry, division.
Sorry, I just was waiting for as the mover.
Oh, sorry, Al.
Yeah, that's right.
Go on.
Look, I'll be short and sweet, as I am physically. Look, for me, there's really not too many things that I can say, but it's a 10-year strategy that has been there. It's a 10-year strategy, and it's interesting having a look at the report, and on number 8, just before, around context, I Am Auckland was adopted in 2013 as a critical strategic action plan. It went through the Committee for Community Environmental Committee that I was the Deputy Chair of. It went through the Parks, Arts, Community and Events Committee that I chaired along with Councillor Casey. And I want to acknowledge the staff. I want to acknowledge you all in regards to this piece of work. And that number C and Councillor Baker was clear and concise in regards to his partai. That this is going to happen when we end up deciding whether we're going to put any putia to the strategic action plan. Two more things that I want to say, and that is I am confident that there will be no wasteful spending in regards to I Am Auckland. My last comment is I have a dream that this strategy will deliver our goals as outlined for our tamariki and rangatahi. Therefore, I will be supporting it. Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A division has been called on the motion which you have been discussing. Councillor Dalton.
For.
IMSB member Ashby.
Aye.
Councillor Baker.
For.
Mayor Brown. Sorry? Thank you. Councillor Darby.
For.
Councillor Ferry.
Enthusiastically for.
Councillor Filipina.
Aye.
Councillor Fletcher.
For.
Councillor Fuli.
Kia ora, for.
MSB member Henare.
Aye.
Councillor Henderson.
Aye.
Councillor Lee. Councillor Leone.
Aye.
Councillor Newman.
Yep.
Councillor Sayers has left the room. Deputy Mayor Simpson. Councillor Stewart.
No.
Councillor Turner.
Not enthusiastically for.
Sorry, I don't. Is that a yes or a no? Sorry, Councillor Turner. It's a yes. Thank you. Councillor Walker. Yes. Councillor Watson. Yes. Councillor Williamson. Councillor Williamson.
No.
Thank you. Declare that carried. Madam Chair.
Thank you. That is carried. We're going to have break for lunch. Can you all please be back by 2:25 and we'll reconvene.
As a matter of interest, is there any lunch provided?
I don't know.
My